welcome to Culture on I-24 News. I'm Elid Grober, happy to have you watching the show. Today on our program, we'll talk to the Danish author who inspired the Muhamad cartoons 10 years ago about his new book. A look at a unique library in East Jerusalem. And we'll hear all about the musician Tricky, who is on his way to Israel. 10 years ago, Danish author Kåre Bluitgen was at the center of a major global controversy when he inspired the publication of cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. Today, he continues to fight for freedom of expression, and he is publishing a new book. In just a moment, we'll talk to Bluitgen from Copenhagen, but first, here's a short story by David Gombin to remind us of the events that took place a decade ago.
10 years since Danish author Kåre Bluitgen was at the center of a major controversy. He still continues to fight in the name of freedom of expression. He recently published a new book, which everyone is talking about. But first, let's have a look at how Bluitgen became the focus of attention a decade ago. In 2005, the journalist and writer Kåre Bluitgen began to work on a major project, the Quran and the life of the Prophet Muhammad. Writing the book turned out to be the easy part. Finding illustrators willing to tackle the subject was more difficult. Many illustrators feared retaliation from Islamic extremists, as happened with the murder of filmmaker Theo van Gogh in 2004. That's when Jyllands-Posten, the main Danish conservative daily, challenged the self-censorship phenomenon and responded by asking 40 illustrators to create cartoons of Muhammad. 12 of these cartoons were published in the newspaper in September of 2005, immediately causing an international controversy. Beyond the diplomatic crisis, it caused violent uprisings in the Muslim world that felt offended. After the Quran and the life of the Prophet Muhammad in 2005, and the Quran Commented published in 2009, a new book by Kåre Bluitgen is now backed in Danish bookstores. The Best Book, a satirical novel that takes place in the 6th century in the Hijra in Mecca. Every religion claims to have the best book. The book is published with 2 covers, one white, one black, to prove that a single book can be reinterpreted at the will of the reader.
And now, via Skype from Copenhagen, I'm joined by Kåre Bluitgen. Hello, Kåre. Thanks so much for joining us. You know, your new book, The Best Book, will be published very soon. Can you tell us what's it about?
It's about the 4, at that time, main religions that come together in Mecca around the year of 600. And they all bring with them their best book, but it's not the same best book. So here the troubles arises. And we follow some part of the life of the Prophet of Muhammad, as it is told by Ibn Ishaq, and we have conflicts between slaves and slave owners. We have racism. We have attacks on the freedom of speech in old day Mecca. But I think you could see some parallel to the modern world, both Europe and Middle East.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Now, you've been described as a very provocative writer because of your book about the Prophet Muhammad. And you know, if you Google your name, the first suggestion by the search engine is Kåre Bluitgen is dead. Doesn't that scare you?
No, I'm not scared because I had no problems with this book in Denmark.
Okay. Now, when you heard about the recent attacks at Charlie Hebdo, what were your first thoughts?
I think, as everybody else, that it was disgusting, it was cowardly. But of course, my second thought was that now it would be more difficult to publish anything that could be kind of critical towards radical Islam. And I think it will be like that.
Yeah, but isn't that already the case? I mean, more and more newspapers and TV stations refuse to publish and air caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad, or even show the ones from Charlie Hebdo. Do you think there's a growing phenomenon of self-censorship?
Yes, unfortunately, I think so. I think, in fact, that the more you publish of these books and illustrations, etc., the less fear we'll get, because, I mean, there are very, very few of these fascists,
Right.
and they can't hit us all. So I think we should just go unpublished, just to show them that they cannot scare us, and we want our democracy.
Yeah, but when you see what's happening around the world nowadays, are you afraid it's a losing battle?
No, it's not. It's not. It's a winning battle. In the end, they can't win this fight, because I think people all over the world, they want to live freely. They want to have the right to express their opinions and their thoughts, and to write whatever they want to write.
Mm-hmm.
I think right now they have the momentum, and we are scared, yes, but in the end, they cannot stop us.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you live in the neighborhood of Nørrebro in Copenhagen, where the terrorist who carried out the recent attacks was shot by police. How did these events affect you?
It did not affect my work, because I just move on as planned. And in fact, it has not changed that much. I mean, my children go with Muslim children, and I was the chief of the local school, I mean, with a lot of Muslims. And there are a few radical elements, but in general, I think it's going quite well in Denmark.
Yeah. You know, as we said, it's been 10 years now since you published your book, The Quran and the Life of the Prophet Muhammad, and since the publishing of the caricatures of Muhammad. What do you think about the situation as far as freedom of speech is concerned in Europe right now?
There's more fear now among the publishers and the writers and the illustrators, because what's happening too often around Europe and even all over the world, it makes people somewhat scared.
Yeah.
So there will be people who will not publish things that they are afraid of could offend radical Muslims.
Yeah, I'm afraid I have to agree. Carl, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you very much.
A change of scenery now. In a beautiful old historical mansion in East Jerusalem rests one of the most fascinating libraries dedicated to Palestinian literature. I-24 News' Ihsan Abu Ghosh visited it, brought back this story.
This East Jerusalem mansion was the former home of Palestinian literary scholar Isaf Nashashibi. Today, it's the Nashashibi Center for Culture and Literature. The institution was organized largely by Ishaq al-Husseini, a scholar and member of the prominent al-Husseini family who partnered with the Dar al-Tifl al-Arabi institution to establish a research library and manuscript archive in the former mansion.
الطابق الأول هو تقام فيه النشاطات والفعاليات الثقافية.
First floor is for cultural activities such as poetry nights, music, art galleries, exhibitions, arts and discussions on culture.
نقاشات أدبية وهلم جرة.
The top floor is the library, the center for research, for old books, texts, and ancient manuscripts. The goal is to keep it as a library and a research center.
The collection includes over 800 manuscripts in Arabic, Ottoman, Turkish, and Persian, the oldest of which dates to the 12th century. In 1982, the institution was founded to serve primarily as a research library. In 1997, the institution reevaluated its mission to focus on promoting Palestinian literary heritage by engaging students in East Jerusalem and hosting cultural events for the community. The center used to lack an online catalog of its books, but thanks to the arduous work of Shaima Abdallah al-Budeiri, the precious manuscripts and books are in the process of restoration and digitalization. Soon, this antique library of Palestinian heritage will be available to scholars around the world.
Staying with books, Timbuktu, the city featured in the recently Oscar-nominated film, holds a large number of rare manuscripts, some of which were taken from the city during the Islamist occupation 2 years ago for safekeeping. Now, the question is whether to return them. More in this report.
Retreating Islamist rebels set fire to 2 libraries containing ancient manuscripts as French and Malian troops retook the Malian city of Timbuktu in January 2013. Cushioning the blow of this enormous loss was the discovery that thousands of these priceless manuscripts had already been rescued by local families keen to protect their cultural heritage. The manuscripts were smuggled out to the capital Bamako, where earlier this year a conference was held to exhibit some of the surviving pieces dating from the 16th century.
Ils sont le témoignage d'une université qui a atteint son âge d'or.
They are the testimony of a university that reached its golden age during the 16th century, the University of Sankore, where there were great scholars. People came from everywhere, all over the world, to study at Timbuktu. These manuscripts, which are written in Arabic, for the most part are a wealth of intellectual knowledge that can teach us a lot about our humanity, not just about Mali or African history, but our humanity.
Sur notre humanité, pas simplement sur le Mali ni sur l'histoire de l'Afrique, mais sur notre humanité.
Of the small proportion of manuscripts that have been studied so far, topics include religion, jurisprudence, optics, and even conflict resolution.
The idea is to find out the contents of these manuscripts, to digitize and make the best possible use of them, because it's true that it constitutes our wealth in Mali, but it's also a global richness.
Having survived the insurgency, the precious texts are now facing another threat, the climate. The manuscripts are at risk of rapid deterioration due to the high humidity of the capital, leading conference participants to call for an emergency plan to optimize their storage conditions. Nearly 28,000 manuscripts are stored at the Ahmed Baba Institute, one of the buildings that had been set ablaze. And a project initiated in Timbuktu to digitize the collection is being continued in temporary premises in Bamako. The institute director is looking forward to the day they will return to their original location.
Faire retourner les manuscrits à Tombouctou, c'est une obligation. C'est un devoir.
It's a duty to return the manuscripts to Timbuktu, an obligation. One day we will have to return to Timbuktu. But when? That's the question. We must first restore the premises to make sure they are suitable to receive these manuscripts. They also need to have maximum security.
Le maximum de sécurité.
Meanwhile, in Timbuktu, 4 libraries are currently being restored. But with the backdrop of the ongoing conflict in the north, the future is far from secure for the return of these ancient manuscripts.
Interesting stuff. Now, Sandra Rabi from I24 News is here to talk to me about a tricky subject.
Yes, indeed.
Talking about Tricky the musician, right? Who
yes,
is
exactly.
Maybe on his way to Israel as we speak.
Exactly. He's going to perform this week in Tel Aviv. It's not his first time. He came here several years ago already.
Yeah. Now introduce to me, to our viewers, who Tricky is, what's his musical style, where is he coming from?
Well, Tricky is a British artist, a musician, rapper, that was probably one of the pioneers of the trip-hop musical movement that started early 90s. Mm-hmm. He was also part of a group called Massive Attack that probably everybody knows.
Group.
Yeah, exactly. So he was with them for 2 albums, Blue Lines and Protection, and then he started his solo career after that.
Right. Massive Attack became a huge success with these 2 albums, right?
Yes, indeed.
And I guess that with big success, sometimes egos can come in the way.
Exactly. Well, the thing is that it was such an amazing success for these 2 albums that it probably attract big record company, big labels.
Money.
Yes, a lot of business inside of that. And Tricky didn't feel like continuing in this kind of atmosphere with the group. Mm-hmm. He felt probably that everybody was taking the blanket, oh, I produced this, I wrote this. So he decided to be on his own and launch his first album, Maxine Quay, 95.
Okay.
And since then, he had 10 albums after that. It's 11 albums at the moment.
Wow, that's... pretty prolific, yeah. Now, he did all sorts of things also. Now, his coming to Israel is a little bit surprising nowadays. Unfortunately, even doing something like performing a concert in Israel is somewhat political.
Yeah, to compare to Massive Attack, for example, well, they didn't want to come to perform in Israel. Mm-hmm. Tricky was solicited and has been asked not to come. The BDS has tried to convince him not to perform in Israel.
Right.
But
he's trying to stay out of politics.
Yeah, he's totally apolitical. He's against politicians in general. So
although, if we look at his last album,
yeah, in the last album there is a track, the last single actually, which is called "My Palestine Girl," but it's not a political track. It's more about a relationship that he had with a girl that he met in Paris that was coming from Gaza.
I see. So it's a love song to a Palestinian girl.
Exactly.
Nothing to it. So he's going to perform here this weekend. Thanks so much, Sanda.
You're welcome.
That's it from us for today. We're done. We'll be back tomorrow, of course. So please join us again.